But Antony remained a warrior, and he recalled his mission in the east to conquer Parthia. Antony asked Cleopatra for her support. She provided him with large quantities of gold, equipment, men, and victuals. All he needed now were the 20,000 men promised by Octavian in exchange for the ships Antony had already sent for the war on piracy. But Octavian had other things on his mind, his own mission in the west.
Romanos eximere debemus, quoda nobisci vesperent. Lila liunisi victoria coptiam aferet. Ostem dociamus, quanto cum damno imperium Romanum adire audeat.
Octavian fought against Sextus Pompey, master of Sicily, whose huge pirate fleet had cut off Italy, forcing the price of grain to soar.
Proventribus in anibus Romanorum! Milites! Oppugnate!
Octavian wanted to reward the people with a resounding victory, one which would confine Antony's at Philippi 6 years earlier to memory. To do so, he turned to Agrippa.
Milites Romani! Nautae! Sexto Pompeo acra sic piratarum proscriturumque obuiam procissurisumus. Quam potens, quam fortis, quam justa sit classis nostra videte. Adversarius quidem, nihilo copias nostras aestimat. Viscentiam nostram atque usum nauticarum rerum iridet. Quoniam quantum copiae nostrae exercitatae sint, quam acutis in gladi non cognovit. In aeterna gloria sic Caesar Octavianus!
Agrippa, coetaneo di Augusto, ne è il braccio destro, è un personaggio che ha un talento militare, un talento organizzativo enorme.
Agrippa a créé une flotte pour Octavien et réalisé de grands travaux à partir de 36. Il a construit une base pour la flotte en rejoignant 2 lacs en campanie. Il a créé un port militaire, un centre d'entraînement au combat pour les soldats et a mis au point une innovation technologique adaptée à la nature du combat naval, l'Harpax, qui va faire merveille.
The harpax consisted of a 2-meter length of wood with an iron grip fixed to the end linked to a cable. This was fired by a catapult onto an enemy vessel, which was then reeled in and boarded. In spite of their superior speed and maneuverability, the enemy ships became sitting ducks. Agrippa lost only 3 ships in the battle, while sinking 28. Octavian had completed his task and strengthened his hold over the West. He had delivered peace to Rome and brought down the price of bread by 3 immediately.
Pendant ce temps, Antoine a des difficultés à accomplir cette mission contre les Parthes en Orient.
Antony had rushed into war against the Parthians. He engaged the enemy on several occasions, but the bravura of his men wasn't enough, and he met with defeat after defeat. Exhausted by this difficult campaign, Antony lost a large part of his army.
L'une des raisons de son échec tient certainement au fait que les troupes d'élite dont il avait besoin et que Octavien s'était engagé à lui envoyer, ces troupes d'élite, en réalité, ne sont jamais arrivées.
Octavia, Antony's estranged wife, eager to help her husband, nevertheless persuaded Octavian to send 2,000 men as reinforcements. The devoted Octavia accompanied the convoy herself to Athens, but Antony, furious at not receiving the 20,000 promised men, refused to see her and repudiated her at distance. Such a terrible affront confirmed the split between Antony and Octavian.
En 34, Antoine va remporter sans aide une victoire contre le roi d'Arménie, nécessaire à l'entretien de son prestige.
In Alexandria, Antony organized a theatrical Eastern-style victory ceremony. At the end of the event, Antony bequeathed the eastern provinces to Cleopatra's children, his own, and Caesar's Caesarion. The aim of founding a dynasty was to maintain unity in the empire, in spite of its huge disparities. The merging of Greek culture to those of Asia Minor would be the cement. These so-called donations of Alexandria spoke of the future, even of the lands yet to be conquered, but in Rome, these held a very different resonance.
Triumphus Romae. Isti agendus fuisset. Romanus non iam fit Antonius. Qui paedici suae progenieque rem Romanam tradidisse ausus est. Et tamen ab initis tantum isti obsecutus sum. Ut cum eo imperium consociavisem, ut ei sororem meam collocavisem, ut ei legiones praebusem. Bene orientia, ergeitum amicitiaque mea, tam magna fuit, ne quiquam, ne sororis meae injuriae, cuius liberi deserti essent, ne a Aegyptia praecipua habita, ne res Romana istius feminae progenii data, ad rei publicae ostemeum abendum me duxissent.
Αυτή η ψάρια ήταν καταλαπτική. Δεν έπιασα ούτε ένα, ούτε δύο, ούτε τρία, αλλά 5 ψάρια στη σειρά. Ένα από αυτά είναι τόσο μεγάλο.
Ιδού ο γιος του Ποσειδώνα.
Ο γιος του Ποσειδώνα δεν άρχισε να γνωρίσει άλλα προβιές.
Εγώ φταίω. Δεν άντεξα. Ήξερα ότι εξαγόρασε τους ψαράδες για να βάλουν στο αγκίστρι του αυτά τα ψάρια. Τους τύχησε που δεν έπιασε τίποτα, τον ξανακάλεσα λοιπόν για ψάρεμα την επομένη. Αλλά αυτή τη φορά, εγώ χρησιμοποίησα δίτες.
Cleopatra, autem Aegyptia, facinorum causa, populi Romani, hostis iam abenda est. Antonio, abista improbissima meretrice, sub actum esse fama fert, qui non solum beneficia misericordiamque nostram nil spectat, sed etiam feminae serus a bello pericolisque sumis, sua sponte non aborret, et etiam contra ciues, contra patriam, pro domina bellum infert, qui nobis relinquitur, nisicum, et isto, et Cleopatra, bellum, gerere,
Έριξα λοιπόν το καλάμι μου και τσιμπίτσε, και non ήμουν χαρούμενος και υπερηφάνος για τις ψαραυτικές μου. Το τράβηξα και τι να δω, μία υπερόχη παστή σαρβέλα.
Τότε είπα, μέγας στρατηγέ. Άσε το καλάμι για εμάς που κυριαρχούμε στη Φάρο και στην Κανόπη. Η δίκη σου, ψάρια, είναι οι πόλεις, τα βασίλεια, οι ήπειροι.
Και συμφωνήσα. Το γέλιο μου άνοιξε την όρεξη. Φέρτε μας ένα χουρνάπουλο!
Dent operam consules. Ne quid res publica detrimenti capiat. Populus Romanus Aegyptis bellum indicat facitque.
Octavian brilliantly held himself up as the defender of Romanness and disguised a new civil war as war against a foreign enemy. Rome against Egypt, but in other words, Octavian against Antony. Octavian dedicated himself to building up his fleet. His victory against Sextus Pompey had given him newfound faith in naval warfare. More and more, he began to imagine himself as sole ruler of Rome. His patient and meticulous propaganda campaign against Antony was bearing fruit. Public opinion backed him, as did his two trusted childhood friends. Agrippa, with his naval experience, took charge of technical aspects, while his other friend, Gaius Maecenas, brought him much-needed financing. Informed by their spies of Octavian's preparations, Antony and Cleopatra knew that war was inevitable.
Πρέπει να σώσουμε την Αίγυπτο από τις φιλοδοξίες του Οκτάβιου. Ο πόλεμος δεν μπορεί να γίνει εδώ.
Επιτυχία σημαίνει δράση. Ας τολμήσουμε να χτυπήσουμε την καρδιά της αυτοκρατορίας. Επίθεση στη Ρώμη.
It would be a crazy gamble. No one had ever dared to attack Rome itself. But Antony was a man who rose to a challenge. If the element of surprise proved to be a success, Antony and Cleopatra would become sole masters of the Roman Empire purely by seeking to defend themselves. Their imposing fleet, built at great expense, put to sea. It numbered 500 heavy warships and 300 transport and cargo ships. Antony and Cleopatra had embarked with 75,000 infantrymen, 25,000 auxiliaries, and 12,000 cavalrymen, but also part of the treasure of Egypt as a war chest. The fleet hit bad weather. Antony decided to seek haven in the Ambracian Gulf in Greece. It was ideal for wintering. It was a large, open stretch of water linked to the sea through a strait overlooked by the port of Actium.
Antoine installe son camp, rassemblant déjà une vaste armée sur le promontoire d'Actium, dans la partie plate au sud du goulet. Le lieu est désolé, difficile d'accès, marécageux, pauvre en eau potable, mais à proximité du port. Il a déjà combattu dans des plaines et connu des difficultés de ravitaillement. Il est en mesure d'apprécier l'atout que constitue une ville derrière soi, capable de nourrir ses troupes nombreuses. La plaine d'Actium, quant à elle, pourra accueillir le combat. Antoine dispose d'une infanterie supérieure à celle de son adversaire.
The majority of resupplying and refitting was naval. So Antony needed to hold two islands crucial to this: Corfu, formerly Corcyra, and Methone. The survival of his vast camp depended on it.
Agrippa wagen wicket. Bokum maurum wagen keep it.
Qui per Antonius et sumore commodus est, et per rutilem socium perdidit. Dei nobis favent. Itaque signe inferre tempus est.
Octavian decided to come to Agrippa's aid. He sailed north for Panormus, and then Corcyra to attack their enemies in a pincer movement. Agrippa was already hard at it, carrying out his naval attacks. From his base camp at Methone, he intercepted merchant ships, compromising Antony and Cleopatra's supplies. Soon, the large Greek port of Patras fell, closely followed by Leucada.
Antonio, che si è portato a nord anche col resto delle truppe, anche con l'esercito, da assediante si trasforma in un certo momento in assediato, cioè a un certo punto viene chiuso sul mare e per terra dalle truppe dell'avversario.
When Octavian arrived, he set up camp on high ground on the northern side of the promontory, across from his enemy. It was an excellent observation post and a strong defensive position. But across the strait at Actium, Antony also held a good position.
À mesure que l'été avance, la situation est de plus en plus mauvaise. Les chaleurs sont arrivées, l'approvisionnement en eau est toujours aussi aléatoire et l'eau est toujours aussi imbuvable. Les moustiques ont fait évidemment leur apparition, la malaria sévit dans le camp, l'approvisionnement est de plus en plus difficile.
Le blocus exercé par Agrippa depuis les trois positions qu'il a conquises, c'est-à-dire Modon, Patras et Leucade, l'autorise à intercepter toutes les communications maritimes d'Antoine avec la Méditerranée orientale et lui interdit tout ravitaillement par mer. Le camp d'Antoine ne sera désormais approvisionné que par voie terrestre à travers les montagnes d'Acarnanie et de l'Étolie. L'acheminement des victuailles est limité à l'indispensable. La voie est aussi lente que dangereuse.
Le moral, évidemment, des soldats s'en ressent. Et par-dessus le marché, il y a des doutes de plus en plus prégnants qui commencent à saisir l'esprit des soldats sur le bien fondé et la légitimité du combat qu'ils mènent.
Imperator, non nullos minides appleandimus, ad Octavianum transfugentes.
Alios etiam.
Regio expedita. Genua flecte.
In onum bellum iudicum, in preditores datur.
As the days passed, desertions and betrayals increased. Antony knew there could be no more delaying. It was time for action. But what kind?
Pugnam pedestrem in Macedoniam commovere praestat, cuia exercitus nostri sine dubio superiores sunt.
Sed quid nisi ab exercitibus defendi possint de classibus nostris, quas osti trademus?
Rem colgitur sum, cum noctis consilio.
Mari pugnare maloc popus vaielamus, patam multi naves nobis sit. Tam superiores nostra. Post naualem victoriam, etiam pedites costes contemnamus. Et animus citis in classibus nostris exitus belli inest.
Cor imperator, aec onera, gladiaium contendis, cor in malis axibus pem collocas.
Le choix d'une bataille navale a souvent été remis en cause. Antoine excellait à terre, mais la mer n'était pas son point fort, surtout face à l'excellent stratège naval qu'était Agrippa. Les historiens antiques voient encore dans ce choix l'influence maléfique de Cléopâtre. Elle aurait dicté sa volonté à la faveur de la nuit à Antoine, animé par le désir d'illustrer la grandeur de l'Égypte au combat en usant de sa flotte imposante.
En réalité, Antoine et Cléopâtre ont élaboré un plan d'ensemble. La bataille navale en est une des composantes. L'idée poursuivie est d'embarquer l'essentiel des troupes et de laisser quelques garnisons à terre défendre les points stratégiques, puis de forcer le blocus et rentrer en Égypte sous le commandement d'Antoine. De là, il s'agit d'organiser une grande bataille terrestre ultérieure en rassemblant les 7 légions intactes d'Antoine, laissées en Syrie et en Cyrénaïque.
Firstly, he was to sail out towards Agrippa's large fleet, causing a diversion and allowing Cleopatra's royal squadron to take flight with the treasure. Secondly, he was to join her and give the signal for the rest of the fleet to follow. Then, together, they could sail to the south of Greece and onwards to Alexandria. The land forces at Actium, which had been unable to embark, would have to march south to meet them.
Ce plan n'était pas absurde. Attendre, c'était perdre. Se replier, c'était reconnaître l'échec sans l'honneur du combat et augmenter les défections déjà nombreuses. Le combat naval était la solution.
The chosen solution meant keeping only the warships and scuttling all the transport and cargo ships. Only 230 vessels of the 500-strong fleet were suitable for battle. The cargo ships were set fire to, while the war chest was secretly transported to Cleopatra's galley, along with sails, masts and rigging.
Là, ce qui est surprenant, et qui a dû évidemment attirer l'attention, peut-être pas des soldats parce qu'ils connaissent pas grand-chose à la marine, mais en tout cas des équipages, c'est qu'on a laissé à bord les agrès prêts à être, et les voiles prêts à être dressés, ce qui signifie que Antoine, évidemment, avait l'intention de les hisser pour s'enfuir, mais ça signifiait effectivement que c'était un plan parfaitement organisé et prémédité.
Antony joined the fleet and urged his men into battle.
Immensa multitudo estis milites Romanorum virrum robr sociorum flos. Suo enim quisque modo pugnare solet. Corpora autem tantum exterquistis ut omnia terrore implerentis. Res omnius nota es Octavianum per imbecilum esse. Neque terra, neque mari ulam insigniem victoriam tulisse. Quae isplerumque es fideligentus separaverunt. Siqua vis hostis es, in legionibus auxilisque pedistribus invenire potest. Ad naves eorum, adversus nostras, sve maxime sunt, proveci non poterunt.
Antony commanded 3 squadrons, notably the right wing facing off against Agrippa, his most fearsome enemy at sea. On the left wing was Sosius, ready to attack Octavian while the center squadron stood off. Cleopatra was to the rear of these with her 60 vessels. Octavian had the advantage in numbers, with 400 ships to Antony's 170, a ratio of 3 to 1.
Alors, à cette époque, un combat en mer ressemblait à un combat terrestre. Une quinquérème ou une heptère s'assiège telle une place fortifiée. Les vaisseaux ressemblent à des forteresses flottantes et s'affrontent en ligne au son de trompettes. Le but est de charger l'ennemi de travers, si possible, et d'éventrer sa coque à l'aide de l'éperon de bronze, le rostre, se retirer et laisser la voie d'eau couler le navire, ou au moins immobiliser l'adversaire, puis procéder à l'abordage.
Évidemment, puisqu'il a embarqué les agrès et les voiles, ça signifie que la réussite du plan d'Antoine dépend essentiellement de la présence de vent. Et le vent, en cette saison, est un vent qui prend l'Adriatique depuis le nord et qui va lui permettre de prendre le large. Sauf que, ce jour-là, le vent tarde à se lever.
Terribile visu, Caesar. Antony classis est.
Nolitea autem existimare. Maximas naues cum altissimis moeniis, virtutem vestram exaequare posse. Quodis autem nauis, ipsa unquam aliquem vulneravit vel interficit. Nameorum naues, postquam defixierunt. Rostris effringere. Aut tormentis examare, aut dignitarisque inflammatis urre. Nobis, facile erit.
Non opus erit. Coniam et nobis partes validres sunt, et isti feminae consilio utuntur.
Around noon, the wind finally rose. The ships of Antony's left wing were ready. The wooden giants began to move forward. Octavian's fleet retreated under pressure from Sosius. And Agrippa's on the other wing did the same. The enemy's retreat augured well. Even Agrippa was retreating. Was he afraid of Antony's war galleys? Publicola, backing up Antony's right wing, couldn't resist the temptation and took the decision to pursue Agrippa in spite of his orders to stay in close formation. Against all expectation, Agrippa suddenly halted his fleet and changed the direction of his oars. The pursued suddenly became the pursuers. Antony had every reason to be concerned. A clash was inevitable. Agrippa intended to stop their escape. Agrippa's flight had been a trap. In spite of the secrecy in which Antony and Cleopatra had formulated their plan, they were betrayed by one of their council the previous day, who had revealed their intentions to Octavian. He decided to join the battle. Despite the fervor of the participants, no one action proved to be decisive. But Antony's fleet appeared to be well and truly trapped. From her galley, Cleopatra observed the unexpected turn of events and reacted with gusto. Unfazed by battle, she decided to go with the initial plan and force the blockade. On seeing Cleopatra cross the battlefield, Antony admired her courage. All around, the battle raged. Warriors clashed, while Cleopatra made it to the open sea. She had fulfilled the first part of the plan. Antony left in her wake, ordering the closest of his vessels to follow.
Ignes inferte.
Octavian, incensed by his enemy's flight, was intent on not letting any more through the net. 120 ships had already escaped.
Te reconhecemos.
Octavian gave the order to use fire. There would be less war booty, but the result would be assured. Agrippa followed orders and used inglorious fire, making the remainder of Antony's fleet unsalvageable. Antony despaired at the tragedy being played out before his eyes. His trapped ships caught fire and sank into the depths. The wing commanded by Sosius was blocked on all sides, a position which ended all hope of joining him and resolved Antony to flight. 40 vessels sank or were burned. The others surrendered, but 12,000 men lost their lives in the waters of Actium. Octavian, an unequaled negotiator, used the so-called flight of Antony and Cleopatra, and 8 days later accepted the surrender of Antony's land armies. Octavian was at the gates of Alexandria. Annexation was imminent. Antony, deprived of all hope of revenge, renounced the company of his men. As for Cleopatra, she foresaw the sad fate that awaited her. as Octavian's finest war trophy in Rome, enchained like a slave, a fate unworthy of a great queen. Cleopatra came up with the idea of spreading news of her death throughout Alexandria to discourage any reprisals against her. But alas, Antony heard the rumor and believed it to be true. Broken-hearted and overcome with grief of losing the one person who could still bring him happiness, Antony took his own life. News reached Octavian that Cleopatra was unable to eat due to the distress of having caused her lover's death and had become seriously ill. On Antony's tomb, she confided, "They planned to tear me away from you. As long as we lived, nothing could separate us. Hide me in this earth with you. Let me share your tomb. Of all the ills that have befallen me, the worst, the most frightful for me, has been the time I have lived without you." Cleopatra released herself from pain by taking her own life with poison. Octavian had Caesarion, the son of Cleopatra and Caesar, executed. Now, no one stood in his way. United for eternity, Antony and Cleopatra would forever remain free spirits, taking with them to the grave their dream of a great Eastern Empire of Greece, founded on the love they had shared for 14 years. The Mediterranean world would become Roman and Western, when it had been on the brink of becoming Eastern and Greek. The adopted young man had come a long way, and now he knew there could be only one Caesar. In 27 BC, Octavian became the first emperor of Rome as Augustus. The Roman Empire, which he'd founded, would last for over 400 years.